Welcome to the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast. There has never been a better time for writers. More information, options, and opportunities are available to you, but navigating these requires insight. Join Mark Leslie Lefebvre as he draws upon more than a quarter century of experience as a writer, a bookseller, and a trusted book industry consultant to explore and reflect on the writing and publishing landscape to help you make informed choices on your writer journey.
Hello and welcome to episode 16 of Stark Reflections. In this episode, I have a wonderful conversation with Natasha Bajema, who is an author, a security advisor, and somebody who's done an intriguing job of creating crowdsourced fiction. We talk about the crowdsourcing, we talk about audience engagement, we talk about emerging technologies. It is a lot of fun. And speaking of fun, let's take a look at this week's Twisting by the Fool segment, which is a tongue twister sponsored by Findaway Voices.
Twisting by the, twisting by the, twisting by the, twisting by the fool, twisting by the fool, twisting by the fool. Such a fool.
Oh man, that boy can sing, can't he? Okay, I've got my Findaway Voices tongue twister sent to me from Will from Findaway Voices. And I have to read this 5 times really fast. Oh boy. Thanks, Will. Thanks for this one. 6 6 seeks 6th sheep sick. 6 6 seeks 6th sheep sick. 6 6 seeks 6 sheep 6 sheep sick. 6 6 sheep 6 sheep sick. Well, that was pretty sick, let me tell you. If you are seeking someone who can't trip over their tongue, I strongly suggest you check out the fine folks at Findaway Voices for professional narrators. You can check it out at starkreflections.ca/findaway. All right, now I got to wipe all the spit off of my computer monitor right now.
Such a fool.
So, speaking of foolish, I always find it funny that there always seems to be some sort of ongoing heightened controversy regarding what Amazon is doing or what they're not doing within their KDP publishing program or via ACX to screw writers. God, how much time do authors waste on all this noise? Of course, those who are spending most of their time focusing on that are likely those who have decided to go all in and be exclusive to Amazon via the KDP Select for ebook publishing, or maybe the higher royalty for exclusive audio to Audible programs. I mean, a regular perception that authors often have of Amazon, or at least of Amazon's KDP Select exclusivity program, is that of an abusive boyfriend. That this program, which can generate some great things and great excitement, such as promotional opportunities and additional funding via Kindle Unlimited page reads, and sometimes comes with negative side effects. Meaning that somehow something happens where KDP Select or Amazon, that sexy and dangerous boyfriend, wrongs the author. That author then leaves them. Well, they don't really leave them. They just publish wide while still keeping their books published to Kindle. Thumbing their nose and saying, I deserve better than this. I deserve someone who will treat me better. Then, of course, the author not being as satisfied with the status quo of cavorting with these other nicer boyfriends, those less dangerous but often less profitable other retailers like Kobo and iBooks and Nook, for example, decides to give the abusive boyfriend another chance. Maybe this time things will be okay and Amazon will treat me well, the author reasons, and then returns for another inevitable black eye. Those are the dangers of being all in with a single retailer. When you allow that, you allow yourself to become a victim to whatever whims come about, whatever changes are imposed by that single retail environment. The abusive boyfriend analogy is, of course, a common one that I've heard multiple times running through the author community. But in reality, as fun as it can be to paint the monolithic retailer, the world's largest bookstore, in a cheeky negative light, I've come to believe that they're not really like an abusive boyfriend at all. Amazon, Kindle, and ACX are After all, amazing tools that authors currently and still have control over how they are used or how they're abused. They're free, and they've provided thousands of authors the ability to follow their dreams and actually write and get paid an excellent wage for their writing. But that's all they are. Amazon carries no malice towards authors. I know several folks who work at Amazon. They're wonderful human beings, folks I enjoy hanging out with. They're intelligent, they're fun, they're compassionate people like you and me. They're good people, and they're trying to do good work to assist the author community. Of course, these good people are part of a much larger corporate engine within which they might not have as much control as some of the smaller players, like the team on the Kobo Writing Life team, for example, or the good folks at Draft to Digital who tend to know the authors personally. So Amazon, this large corporate engine, isn't purposely doing things to harm authors. They're certainly not akin to an abusive boyfriend. Hell, they likely aren't even aware of the so-called conspiracies that authors are always getting all up in arms about every couple of weeks. No. See, Amazon's more like a giant human going about his daily tasks of planting seeds and watering their garden, performing smart business tasks that'll grow the business that result in bringing in the next $10 million, all while accidentally stepping on all the ants they aren't even really aware of or scurrying about in their garden. I know it sounds cold, but that's more likely the case than the fact that Amazon is purposely trying to hurt or penalize authors. Authors are just part of the landscape. Some of them are larger animals, and Amazon will pay attention to them and feed them better. But most aren't even on their radar. They're just doing their thing, moving about and enriching the soil that cultivates Amazon's garden of profits. They're just making a buck after all. Who cares if a few ants get stepped on in the process of cultivating their own garden? There'll certainly be thousands more back tomorrow if a few of them are crushed today. Okay, I need to take a bit of a breather there. Apologies for the rant. It was just something that's been on my mind and I just had to get off my chest even early in the episode. If you enjoyed the rant, or if you didn't enjoy the rant, please let me know either way in the comments for this episode on starkreflections.ca or at me at Twitter at Mark Leslie. I would love to hear if you found some value in that or it was just something that annoyed you because you were just dying to get to the interview in this podcast. But I did want to also share a bit of a personal update. I've been talking about the running training I have been doing. And I have to let you know, Liz and I ended up purchasing a membership at a gym, which we started doing. And even though I'm not a gym person, because I've kind of disliked hanging out with the big, the sexy jocks with the big pipes that make me feel inadequate as a man, and all the, all the laughs that I always imagine are directed my way when I'm struggling in the gym. But it's actually been a really, really good experience at Good Life Fitness here in Waterloo. And I've been going every day and, meeting Liz there when she finishes work and I'm finishing the work that I'm doing from home. And it's actually been a really, really good experience. We've picked up some of the pace that we have on the running. We're getting some of our endurance back, and we're almost back on track for the half marathon at the end of the month. Having access to this indoor spot where we can actually do our running is critical because this has been an absolutely devastating April in terms of spring. There is no spring. There's just like this long, extended, crazy winter. I mean, it was even snowing yesterday and cold snow and rain mix this morning when we got up. So, it's gonna be a while before we can actually get to run outside. So it was a smart move doing this, and we're basically working really, really hard at that. Something else that I have been working on that's finally sort of coming together is a nonfiction book that I'm going to be putting together. Now, this is based on some of the experience I've had just in the last few months doing consultations and coaching with different authors. And it's a book that's going to be called, and this is the tentative title, is Indie Publishing Insider Secrets. And the subtitle is What Running Kobo Writing Life, a Print-on-Demand Business, and 25 Years of Book Selling Taught Me About Success for Authors, Publishers, and Self-Publishing Services. Now, this is a book that's going to include all kinds of speculation and discussion about what I've learned about the power of price and the importance of community and the balance in a writer's life. talking about things like metadata and dealing with retailers and online retailers and libraries and dealing with rejection in all of its formats, whether you're traditionally published or self-published. And all of those different elements, all of those little topics that I've covered in seminars and workshops and one-on-one consultation and coaching, and all of the different elements that people keep asking me questions about. I'm taking the time to put it down chunk by chunk, little by little, and that's something that I hope to have ready for the end of this summer. I will be providing insights on the working of this book to those who are following along, to patron-only members who are following me at patreon.com/starkreflections. Those who are paying $3 or more a month will have access to some of the early insights as I put this book together, and I will of course be valuing that feedback that people are offering me on putting this together, because I think that there are still enough people who may benefit from that overarching view that I can provide for the book industry. Not that there's ego involved in that. I just realize as these questions keep coming up that these are things that I really should answer in a piece of writing. I did, for example, have somebody who reached out to me for consultation who found an online webinar I had done, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. And they had said, wow, if that had been put into a book, I would have paid a lot of money for it. So, when you hear something like that, it kind of inspires you to say, well, maybe I should take the time to put some of that knowledge into a book so people can enjoy it in a format that they may be more comfortable learning in. But speaking of a format that you're more comfortable in, you're comfortable listening to a podcast, and I've bent your ear for long enough with rants and personal updates and stuff like that. Let's get to this fascinating conversation with Natasha. Hey, Natasha, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Mark, thanks so much for having me.
So many fun things to talk to you about today. I'm going to start with your background and how it inspired this. I think it's a trilogy so far that I can see, but the trilogy or the series that you're writing with Lara Kingsley.
Yeah, so I currently work for the Department of Defense. I've been working in national security for 18 years, specializing in weapons of mass destruction. And in recent years, we've been looking at the impact of emerging technologies on national security and what that might mean for weapons of mass destruction for both state programs and non-state actors using WMD. And so I've always wanted to be a fiction writer from the time I was very young, but never had the time.
Right.
When I finally decided, okay, now is the time, then I got assigned to the Pentagon for 3 years. So that was a bit of a problem. And then, so I'm like, well, now's the time. And then I got 2 puppies. So that delayed me a little bit longer. So by the time I actually got started in 2015, I had been already thinking about emerging technologies and their impact, not just on national security, but on the world and on our daily lives. And so at the time I was working on a nuclear conspiracy trilogy, which was kind of epic political thriller, inspired in some ways by George R.R. Martin's kind of multiple POVs, and it was going to be incredibly complex. And on a whim, I started up another novel called Bionic Bug, and this was driven by my interest in an idea about bugs, live bugs, having microelectronics packages tied to their back, allowing us humans to basically operate them, to fly them around.
Okay.
And DARPA has started that research back in 2006 is when I read the first article about it, and it's advanced since then. And so I had that idea kind of running around my head, and then another idea. So one of the challenges a new author faces, one of many, is how am I going to build up my reader audience? How am I going to build up my reader base? When you have nothing yet written, how do you begin doing that? And I didn't really want to wait to publish to crickets, if you know what I mean. Like, I didn't want to get to the point where, okay, now I'm going to press publish and nobody knows.
Right.
And so what could I be doing in advance? And that's where this idea of crowdsourcing came up, this idea that why don't I allow readers into the actual writing of the novel? And so it was that idea plus the bionic bug idea that came together for me. And I started a second novel while I was working on that other complex series
Right.
or trilogy. And I began writing scenes and then offering up to my very, very small reader group of about 8 to 10 people 3 options for the next scene.
Okay.
They would vote on which of the 3 they wanted, and then I would write the next scene based on that option that they chose.
Okay. And this just happened organically with people that you knew who were your first readers?
Yes, so Facebook. So I have friends on Facebook who are interested in my career as a writer, and so as I kind of put that out there on Facebook, I would post these scenes on Wattpad and also my website, and basically people would get involved just in the comments. So it was organic.
Oh, that's cool. Okay. And so that's part of the inspiration for what you ended up doing, because you just finished. So it is the 21st of March today.
Right.
And recently you finished a very successful Kickstarter campaign.
Yes.
You kind of blew the goal out of the water, which is pretty phenomenal. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And it's called, I think the subtitle of the project is called a crowdsourced mystery novel.
Right.
So you've done this with a small group of core readers. Then what did you do? So what's the genesis of that Kickstarter?
Yeah. So with Bionic Bug, I started out and I did that what I told you with the offering up the 3 options and the voting back in, it was the fall of 2016. And then NaNoWriMo started. I didn't know about NaNoWriMo, and I was like, I could write this novel real quick if I just did it. And so I kind of separated from my readers for a bit. I did upload all of the scenes as I wrote them on NaNoWriMo. They were extremely rough draft, and that led to further interactions. But I eventually put Bionic Bug aside and was working back on the trilogy again. And we had a conversation. It was in the spring of 2017. I just went to the Smarter Artist Summit, and we had a conversation. And I was kind of at a turning point in what I should do. And I had 2 options. Option number 1 was continue with the nuclear trilogy. The first book was 150,000 words, and I was my head was like breaking at that, trying to edit it with 8 different character POVs, and I was starting to think that maybe it was a little too much to bite off as a first time author. And then the other idea was Bionic Bug. So by this time, I had finished a first draft of Bionic Bug. I'd sent it out to some of the same readers who were there from the beginning for their feedback. And I was really keen on this idea of crowdsourcing. And I had this idea that what if I did it through Kickstarter and tried to expand beyond my base to get a couple of additional people to join in, and wouldn't that be a fun idea for Kickstarter? But I didn't know what to do. And so we had the conversation, and you got excited, and I'm like, all right, I'll do this other thing. So that eventually led to me deciding I'm going to do this Kickstarter. And then it was a matter of finding the right time. So I had to finish Bionic Bug first, because I did believe that to have a successful Kickstarter for a book, I had to offer something tangible, a value proposition that would draw more people than maybe would come to the crowdsourcing idea, which is a little out there. And I wasn't quite sure if that's something that readers want. Okay. So that's what led to the Kickstarter.
Okay, because I know one of the rewards for the Kickstarter was a limited edition signed, personalized signed hardcover.
Yes.
It looked beautiful in your video as well. I know that was probably a prototype for what you're going to produce, but that was kind of exciting. So you already had a completed novel that so as I understand it, it was for Project Gecko that people got to participate.
Yes.
And help you choose different elements. You mentioned craft beer, which kind of you had me at craft beer. As one of the, naming the craft beer was one of the examples of things that the participants could do. But so this beautiful hardcover, how did you come to decide that would be? I mean, that's a gorgeous reward too.
Yeah.
It's limited.
So so I remember back to an episode of Joanna Penn's podcast, Creative Penn podcast, where she was talking about limited editions, and she was talking about the uber limited editions where, you could use very special materials and do bookbinding. And, she loves the craft. She wants to do all these crazy things. And I thought about that. I'm like, how hard would it be to do just a standard hardcover limited edition? I looked into it, and really you just limit the number of copies,
Right.
and by the ISBN. And then to make it super special, of course, you want to sign it. And then also what I did is I made an original artwork cartoon of Laura Kingsley, my main character, with the title Bionic Bug. And I used that as the nameplate inside. Okay. And I put copy number on that. And then I signed it, and then with a personal note. Okay. And so I felt like most of the people that I know in my friends and family would at least want a copy. So that would start to drive the Kickstarter. And I could ask for a little bit more money because it's a limited edition. And so, yeah, I actually had it produced through Ingram Spark. And I went ahead.
Hardcovers.
Yeah, and I went ahead and ordered a lot of copies. So but I've sold most of them. So I'm really excited.
You got to hang on to at least one for the collectors. Okay, so I want to come back to something, because you were talking about, the 150,000 word novel project, and now you've got this very sort of progressive, book series with Lara, and you're working full time. And you've got the animals as well, which occupy a lot of time as well. So where do you? I'm assuming you make the time to write, and where do you do that?
Yeah, so, it's a labor of love. I don't know if I would write if I didn't love writing more than just about anything. And so I think that's really key for me, because time is very limited. But I think a lot of writers are in the same position with families, kids, dogs, jobs. So I pretty much work in the evenings, and I don't have a daily quota, except during NaNoWriMo, which can be tough. Yeah. Because my job has to come first. And so whatever energy I have, for example, if I have an event coming up and I'm tired, I better not, write too much that evening. I need to get ready for that event. Right. So I spend about an hour an evening during the week working on the novel or something related to the novel. Sometimes more if I feel inspired, but the dogs can get in the way, asking for my attention. Of course. And then on the weekends, I try to do 3 to 4 hours a day, so that kind of gets me up to about 10 hours a week, which actually is pretty significant. Yeah. And I can make good progress that way. But if I wanted to do other things, I think it would be really tough to find the time.
Yeah, that's of course. Yeah. And then going back to the Kickstarter campaign, you're in the process of launching. It looks like you're doing a book launch in April. Can you tell us a little bit about that for any listeners, maybe local? Yes,
I'm doing a book launch party at Wicked Bloom. It's a bar in Washington, D.C. Okay. On North Capitol. And I have it out on my Twitter at WMD Girls, my Twitter handle. Okay. And so this kind of came about, this is driven by friends, I think, because the idea of a book party makes me want to crawl in my bed, hide under my covers, and never, ever, ever come out. I don't like being the center of attention like most introverts. And the idea of anybody, the notion of anything surrounding me, I just want to go in the corner. Please don't put me out center. So my friend, who just loves the fact that I'm doing fiction, she's like, you have to have a book party. And so a lot of this is driven by her and her enthusiasm. But I'm really kind of excited because, again, this is another way to interact with readers and get people excited.
Oh, that's cool. And you are in Washington?
Washington, D.C., yes.
Washington, D.C., and Wicked Bloom is there. We'll post a link to the party.
Excellent.
I imagine, do people have to RSVP, or can they?
I'm not going to make it RSVP. I'm going to just see what happens. Wicked Bloom. So another backstory there is the first chapter of Bionic Bug takes place in Wicked Bloom.
See, that's perfect. I love that. That's really.
And they are so excited. I'm having dinner with the owner on Monday to discuss all of the drink names we're going to come up with, like Drone Buzz and Beetlejuice or whatever.
Special drinks for the night. That's really that's sweet. That's awesome.
Yes.
Cool. Now, do they serve craft beer at Wicked Bloom?
Absolutely.
All right. Could see if we can do a drive down there. As long as the snow goes away, you guys have been having
Sure.
having more. The East Coast has been nailed quite a few times in the last little while, but it should be fine in April, right? Winter's finally going to give up.
Yeah, sure, whatever.
It doesn't feel like it. Okay, so let's go back to the Kickstarter. So some of the specifics, just because I'm familiar with it, but I know my listeners may not be familiar with it. What are some of the specific goals that you thought to set out for the Kickstarter? And
Yeah. So my first and foremost goal was to get Kickstarter's attention. I wanted to become a project we love by Kickstarter because that gets you additional visibility on the platform and exposure to people that you might not see you otherwise. Kickstarter is not really known for fiction. I think other types of projects are a lot more successful on Kickstarter than fiction. And so that was my primary goal. So what I ended up doing was I wrote a blog post about why Kickstarter. So Kevin Kelly, who wrote about the 1,000 True Fans, revised his article back in a number of years ago. And to say that Kickstarter was synergistic with that idea, that Kickstarter is really about getting people to have a stake in what you're doing to bring your project to life. And once people do that, they spread it by word of mouth. So it's kind of the same concept as 1,000 True Fans. So I wrote a blog post. I sent that to Kickstarter. I also did a giveaway using Rafflecopter to generate tweets that would then tag Kickstarter. I did a number of things. I followed some advice that I found online. Well, I failed at getting their attention, at least to become a project we love. So there, I had high hopes. But I'm not sure what really drives their decision. I think probably activity on the platform itself. And it's tough. And that what many people warned me about using Kickstarter. They basically said, well, you have to have a platform to be successful on Kickstarter. And I think to some degree that's still true.
Okay. But you were still successful on Kickstarter. I mean, you met your goal.
Sure.
You acquired new fans.
Yes.
And you've got people. So what's the process now? So Bionic Bug is launching officially in April in all formats on all platforms?
No, I am going to. So
whoa. Okay.
I'm doing something a little different. I'm on Kobo
Okay.
right now exclusively. There are a couple of reasons.
Okay. Yeah, I'm curious about that.
Well, I mean, a lot of the advice that I've received from authors who've already published is, oh, if I could go back and change just one thing, I'd wait. I'd wait until I had 3 books or 5 books, and then I would publish them one after the other to leverage that momentum. And they call that banking books or something. I wrote a blog post about that. And so, but there's this problem when you're a new author, there's a psychological burden because you've been writing for so long. All your friends and family know you're writing. You sequester yourself. You don't come out and play. And if you don't press publish, that can start to get in your head a little bit. And so essentially what I did is I published on Kobo in January. So Bionic Bug is up there as an ebook.
So people can actually start reading it now. If they hear this, they're intrigued.
Yes, they can go on Kobo and they can get Bionic Bug and read it. But that's where it's going to stay, I think, until 2019. I haven't.
Really?
I thought maybe I could go to other platforms, but I'm not going on Amazon. I'm waiting for Amazon. I'm going to wait
Okay.
until I have 3 to 5 books. I haven't quite decided whether it's 3 or 5, but I'm going to plan a launch strategy. I'm going to make sure I have all my ducks in a row, and then I'm going to make a big splash on Amazon.
Okay. Now I was just poking around on the Kobo website, taking a look at it, and I see, it was launched this year. You've got 5-star reviews. You have people saying that it's a page turner. The mystery grabs you from the start. They love the strong female character and the great sidekicks. On the edge of my seat. Could not put the book down. So obviously, people are loving the book already. How do you address this kind of leads to the question is, wow, what about all those people who are so eager and excited? Now, do the Kickstarter people, are they fortunate enough that they get access to be able to read it sooner?
Yes. So they all have access. So everyone who is on the Kickstarter that Most of the rewards involved at least an ebook version of Bionic Bug. The limited edition hardcovers.
Okay, so they're now all satisfied.
Yes.
They're not
yes.
waiting. Okay.
No, so I had a stockpile of the hardcover, so I've been sending those out. The ebook ready to go. I'm using BookFunnel to distribute. It's super easy. And so people are now reading Bionic Bug, and yeah, they can get it on Kobo as well.
Okay, so that's cool. So this is just part of a larger strategy where you're applying a whole bunch of things you've obviously been paying attention to, right? You've gone to the smarter conventions, you've listened to the smarter podcasts, Joanna Penn example, and you've applied a whole bunch of knowledge and learning to say, I'm going to do this right.
Yes. Well, I mean, I don't know if you can say it's right, but I'm going to do it
for you, right?
The best way that I know.
Okay, fair enough. But you're going to do it very strategically, not haphazardly. Hey, I've written a book. I'm just going to slap it up and let's see what happens. You've thought about the strategy far in advance. And so the other strategy, and I want to get back to this because you talked about it, you had determined that the epic 150,000 word complex George R. Martin style science novel, because I'm assuming it would still be related to emerging technology. You said, no, you know what, I'm going to put that aside for now because was it the character? Was it Lara who appealed to you more? What was that?
Actually, it was really tough for me to put that aside. That's why I was in such a conundrum when I talked to you, because I loved the characters on that trilogy. I was attached to them. They were my family members. I'd been thinking about them since 2010.
Wow.
And it's epic. And so I was emotionally attached to that. I wasn't attached to Bionic Bug and the characters there. I was kind of like, well, it's interesting enough, but and so that's why it was a tough choice. But once I made the choice for Bionic Bug and Lara Kingsley, I began to get to know the characters,
right?
As the creator gets to know them. And then they grew on me. And now I'm not sure when I would go back to the trilogy at this point.
Wow. Okay. So this is one of the elements that when I talk to writers, I talk about the 3 Ps of publishing success, and it's patience, practice, and persistence. Now, I asked you the question, where did you find the time to write? Where did you find that incredible patience, which is something that's kind of rare?
Well, I think I've always had patience. I did a PhD, so I spent 5 years by myself writing a book that no one cares about.
Okay, that's a PhD, right?
That is the definition of a PhD. You hope that maybe 2 people read it. If you got 2 people to read it, success. It's not quite like a fiction author. So I think it's a personality thing for me. I've always had big goals. Coming to Washington, working for the U.S. government was a big goal. I'm from Michigan. This wasn't foretold. So I think, and then discipline, I think, is another thing. So I think that kind of helps. When you sit down every day, I think you can become more patient because it's just part of your experience. And then after a year, you can't believe how much you achieved. So I think, when you start doing that, when you start, recording, your achievements over a year and you see how much you can get done in a year, I think that just fuels patience.
Okay, that's cool. Because, the other thing too, and it's not just the patience with the process and et cetera, but you also invested in these beautiful covers. You already have covers for Bionic Bud, Project Gecko, and was it Genomic Data? Is it
Genomic Data? Yeah.
Genomic Data. I don't pronounce science words very well, but you've already got the beautiful matching covers. You've obviously invested already in this well before the Kickstarter. You had to find or save the money for that, and yet you're at a place where, well, I'm not really going to make my money back until these books launch. That must have been was it a challenge to
so that comes from being part of a family of entrepreneurs. So my grandfather immigrated to Canada from the Netherlands in their 40s after World War II with nothing, built up his own business. And I think that created a sense of entrepreneurship across all of his children. And so my mother, and both my mom and dad were entrepreneurs. They got into computers in the 1980s, learned computer programming, were self-taught, and then they built up their own companies. they had to make major investments. They had to buy a $5,000 computer in the 1980s. $5,000 in the 1980s was a lot of money.
That's a
They
down
did
payment
so.
for a house back
That's
then.
all they had. I know, because I got no Christmas presents, right? So I was coding at 6 years old on that black computer with the green print. But I didn't get Christmas presents, right? So they were making sacrifices for what they saw was their long-term future. And for me, that's the same.
It's interesting. Your series is set 10 or so years
10 years.
into the future. Is that part of that patience, or is the technology that you use in the series, is it something that you are suspecting is going to be available in 10 years?
Yes. So setting it 10 years in the future, I think, is as far as my mind can possibly envision of what will be possible, not just in terms of technology, but how it will be integrated into society. So self-driving cars, we heard this week, a pedestrian got killed by an Uber self-driving car. And there's lots of analysts out there talking about how this will set back, driverless car technology. And here's the deal. The technology is not there yet. The technology could not see the pedestrian. Why?
Right.
Because it wasn't part of its neural network. It didn't, technology doesn't yet have the capability to adapt to those circumstances. And so it's not just the technology, it's also society. So the other question that I have about driverless cars is, will Americans ever accept a driverless car?
Because it's control, right?
Well, I mean, think about Americans and their big gas guzzling cars, and the freedom of the road and how protective I expect that they will be over those freedoms. So I'm fascinated with kind of that intersection between the art of the possible and then what society will accept and adopt.
Right.
And 10 years ahead was just far enough to give myself some room as a fiction author.
Okay.
Fudge a little.
Yeah.
But also not too far out that I get into sci-fi and I lose kind of that sense of reality. So one of the people who read my book said what she loved about my book was that it feels a little science fiction because there are elements that we don't yet have,
right.
But it felt very real.
Okay.
And what I like about the series is it helps me cope with some of the changes I think that are on the horizon.
Okay.
And one of them being driverless cars.
Okay, because your book is very Michael Crichton-esque in that Michael Crichton didn't write science fiction. He wrote contemporary thrillers that had some element of science. Usually, that's speculated. Is that an apt comparison to?
Yes, I would not say that it's like Michael Crichton at all, but Michael Crichton is one of my favorite authors, and I feel like there is a very special niche that he left behind that I don't think has been quite filled yet.
Okay.
Where so there are authors who are writing techno thrillers and I read them but they're way out there. They're not quite real. What I think was special
Right.
about Michael Crichton is that, he was really capturing what was possible at
Right.
that time and kind of projecting out and what that could look like. And so Jurassic Park was in the 1990s, but now it's incredibly salient.
Right.
We can potentially recreate living organisms from their genetic data.
Yeah. That's fascinating stuff. Is that are there target sort of audiences, like people who enjoy Michael Crichton are going to enjoy this series? People who enjoy, are there other authors that come to mind when you're thinking about your target audience?
So I'm still trying to find out where I fit because I'm writing mystery novels. So I chose specifically mystery novels in part because I'm finding it difficult to cope with today's news cycle.
Right.
And all of the things that are going on that feel so negative and heavy. And the mystery genre offers a really nice kind of tidy conclusion. There's a bit of a safety in there. Okay, I'm going to read a mystery. We're going to solve a crime. The world will be brought back to order when I'm finished.
Right.
You can't say that about all thrillers.
Yeah, that's
Thrillers
true.
can leave you going, ooh, that's uncomfortable. And you can't stop thinking about, I love thrillers. I'm a huge thriller fan. But right now, I just feel like I can't stomach it. So I call it a beach read for thriller readers. So if a thriller reader is looking for something that's a little bit lighter, but it has some thriller elements because I have technology in there. In Bionic Bug, I have a rogue scientist. So there's kind of a more global conspiracy going on as well as the mystery that's being solved.
Okay, that's cool. Now, among other things, because you have a lot of balls in the air for this project, I see that you are going to be launching a podcast later this year, talking
Yes.
about these technologies and how
Yes.
they intersect with your writing.
So the podcast idea, so podcasting, as you know, takes a lot of time. It's a huge time investment. There's some financial investment there. So I've been wanting to do this for a long time, but I had to make sure it was the right thing to do, given those two factors. But it also kind of takes off from where I was talking about reader engagement and developing 1,000 true fans. So one way I thought about how could I build a following for my novels? Well, why not read my novels on a podcast? And there's, the Pod2Cast, or Jim Kukral is starting that up. And so that's been in my head a lot, listening to Sell More Book Show. And, but that wasn't enough for me because I'm not a narrator, so I'm not going to do the accents, I promise you, because I'll mess them up. And, so it makes me feel a little uncomfortable because I'm not going to be delivering quality narration. But also I thought, why not lean into my expertise here as well? So what my plan is to kind of kick off with a brief intro where I talk about news headlines that have caught my attention. So they're very specific to me, like the driverless car incident or the self-driving car and the pedestrian getting killed. And another headline that caught my attention was Barbara Streisand cloned her dog, which has been possible for a lot of years.
Wow.
You spent $50,000 to basically, when her dog died, to get its clone basically recreated. That's possible.
But not its memories.
No, not its memories. So not
DNA.
Not altered carbon. No,
okay.
no. And so then I'll do that probably very briefly, and then read a chapter from my book. And then in the back matter, I will talk about the backstory. So sometimes there's a writing backstory. Sometimes there's a technical backstory. So in the first chapter, I introduced the notion of the FBI having the lead for weapons of mass destruction in the U.S. So whenever there's a case involving WMD, the FBI would have the lead for that case. And I introduced that basically in a character who's an FBI agent had jurisdiction over a case that a private investigator was looking into.
Oh, that's cool. Now, for listeners, because obviously if they're listeners of the podcast, they enjoy podcasts. Is there a link that we can send them to for
Not yet,
where they can subscribe? How are they gonna sign up to find out about it?
Well, they can go to my website, www.natasha, Natasha, Bajema, Bajema.com. I will have all the information there. I've been a little delayed in producing the first episodes because of an extended cold and allergies. I'm just waiting. You want to make a good first impression,
yeah, for spring to be over. Yeah, no, I understand that completely. That makes complete sense. That's great. Now, you've been writing for a long, long time now. You talked about characters being in your head since 2010. It's 2018 now. You obviously have practice and patience, persistence. What's the thing you're most looking forward to between now and when these books actually officially launch everywhere?
Oh, the thing I'm most looking forward to, I think, being done with 3 books.
Okay.
Because after finishing the first book, the voices in my head started to wonder, is that just a fluke? It's just a fluke. You did it once, but you're not going to do it again. And, we all have these voices that continue to surface. And I think finishing book 2 is going to feel really amazing because I'm like, okay, I repeated the pattern. I can do this.
Okay.
And then I think book 3, I'll start to feel like I can feel like I have writer's credentials now that I've finished 3 books. So I think that feeling of, yes, I'm a writer. Yes, I can do this. It may take some time, but I can definitely do this.
Awesome. Well, that is really exciting, very inspiring. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
I'm fascinated with Natasha's choice to engage with her supporters and her fans by allowing them to take part in making decisions along the way as she crafts her novels. There's something truly intimate and truly unique in that process. Those who are supporters aren't just supporting the project financially, but they're a part of the community that's supporting it creatively. I recently experimented with community feedback solicitation and I had some pretty positive results just asking what author profile picture people preferred. So even though I don't have a large group of followers on my author Facebook page, the post reached more than 1,200 people. You see, what I think was important is the authenticity and the genuine nature of the post. I hadn't done it for any other reason than just to find out what people thought, and I genuinely cared about what they had to say. 45 people voted, and there were almost as many comments. People had advice, they had thoughtful and interesting things to share. They also, of course, had funny things to share and jokes. Now, all the votes, all the comments, all the jokes were greatly appreciated. It felt good to be a part of something that wasn't about selling something. It was just about soliciting honest feedback to get people's thoughts and opinions. That's what Natasha's doing with the crowdsourcing. Again, it's not about the money, although, yeah, the money helps. It's about the invested and interested community that is being built slowly. And speaking about things being built slowly, just like Rome, which was not built in a day, it's not something you can do quickly or easily. And that leads to the second reflection that I have about re-listening to my chat with Natasha. Now, she demonstrates an incredibly strong degree of patience, as well as diligence in her strategy. She does not sacrifice long-term build-up and gain over any short-term whim or desire. Now, that takes discipline. It reminds me of my good friend James A. Owen, the author of Drawing Out the Dragons, a meditation on art, destiny, and the power of choice. James is a great guy and an excellent motivational speaker, and he talks about this as an important aspect. Now, I'm going to play a quick clip from the audiobook version of the book because you got to hear it in his voice. I just don't do it justice.
Choices are cumulative, but the results are not always apparent or immediate. Sometimes you just have to keep making the right choices, even if it seems there's no benefit to doing so. Sooner or later, there will come a moment when what you really want most is tested, and how you respond in that moment will reveal the culmination of your choices. If you make that hard choice to do what you believe in most, people find ways to help you. The decision I made on that drive from Los Angeles involved a choice, the most important choice I make about everything on a daily basis, the most important lesson I teach in person or in my books, the one lesson I hope you remember. Never, ever sacrifice what you want the most for what you want the most at that moment. What I had wanted most at that moment was a hamburger. What I had wanted the most was the right publishing deal, and I held out. A choice with no consequences has no value. Making a choice knowing there will be consequences and being willing to bear them is what distinguishes the right choices from the wrong ones.
Okay, there you have that short clip from Drawing Out the Dragons. Now, I've read James's book, and I've listened to his audiobook multiple times, and I've seen James do the Drawing Out the Dragons talk at least half a dozen times at the Superstars writing seminars in Colorado Springs. And every time I read, I see, I hear it, I'm re-inspired and I find something new to take away. This time, I'm thinking about his advice about long-term strategies and goals, and I'm thinking about the incredible patience that Natasha is showing in her long-term strategies, and I'm nodding my head and I'm thinking, now she knows exactly what she's doing, and she's going to take the long-term high road over any short-term gains. I'm looking forward to following her when in a year or two people talk about her overnight success story and they forget just how hard and diligently and patiently she worked at it before things finally came together in her long-term plan. Never sacrifice what you want the most for the thing you want the most at this moment. Thanks, James. Thanks, Natasha. That gives me something to reflect on. I hope that gives you something to reflect on too. Thanks for hanging out with me in this episode of Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing. I'm looking forward to chatting with you and reflecting with you again next week in episode 17.
Thank you for listening to the Stark Reflections podcast. You can find show notes for each episode at starkreflections.ca.
The music for this podcast, Laser Groove, was composed and produced by Kevin MacLeod. Check out more of Kevin's great music at incomptech.com.